Today we're going to be talking about how to write a proper paragraph for a literary analysis writing. So the purpose of learning how to write these type of paragraphs is so that you can make the best points possible with the best evidence possible. So when writing a paragraph, I like to use the acronym of T: topic sentence, example, explanation, analysis. I like to think of writing a paragraph as kind of like a hamburger. The more meat, the more toppings you have on a hamburger, the better it is. When you guys were in elementary school, you started writing paragraphs like this: short, sweet, maybe a little evidence to support what you were saying. But now, as you have matured and gotten older, so should your writing. We want your paragraphs to not just be 3 to 4 sentences, but they need to be larger, stronger paragraphs with more evidence, more support, and you also need to explain that support. So our goal by the end of the semester is to get you not only writing small paragraphs, but paragraphs with multiple pieces of evidence and multiple explanations and analysis to connect that to your claim or your topic sentence. So in your topic sentence, you are going to make a claim. A claim is where you state your opinion, but state it as it is a fact. So it needs to be something that's debatable, something that the insight or conclusion that you have drawn from the text. So usually in a literary analysis, it's the theme. So what you're going to be doing is deciding the theme of the story, which you should have already done, and now you're going to argue that theme and back it up. In your claim, you not only want to state the theme, but you want to state the support that you have. So how are you planning to support your claim? Usually it's through a literary device like what we've talked about. Are you going to use the tone, the mood, symbols, irony, the characters and how they change their characterization? If it's an individual paragraph, you always want to state the title and author of what you're analyzing. If it's a larger essay, then that's usually in your introduction, your thesis statement, which is your claim, your larger claim. You want to avoid personal pronouns like I think or I believe. You want to just state it as a fact. Like the theme of the story is, not I think the theme of the story. It makes it more believable, and you want to stand your ground. So instead of saying I think or I believe, just put the theme of the story is. Also, try not to refer to your reader as you. Always say the reader or the audience, because you don't want the person that's reading your essay to feel called out. So always say the reader or the audience. Avoid using you. The next part of a paragraph is the example. So this is the evidence or the direct quote from your story, from the story or from the text. But you can't just put the quote in there without any introduction. You always need to lead in to the quote or introduce it with context. So this is where you introduce it with like who said it, who are they saying it to, when did this happen in the story, where, what is happening around it. This helps the reader understand, where this quotation is coming from. We always do want to assume our reader has read the story, but you still need to give that context of where it's occurring. So instead of just throwing the quote in there, you want to lead into it with context. Not only does it help the reader, but it helps the flow of your writing so that it doesn't break it up. Because if you throw in the author's words, that's a different tone of voice, a different way of speaking than how you do. So you want to lead into it with your own writing to help that. The next part of your example is the actual quotation from the text. You want to use a direct quote. Don't paraphrase, put the direct quote. So you'll use quotations to put that in there. You don't have to use a long quote. If there's only a part of it you need, you can blend that into your writing. You can cut parts out of it by using an ellipsis, the 3 dots. But just make sure that you're not destroying it and that it still makes sense within your writing, that still feels like a complete sentence. You need to, again, like we talked about, blend it in with that context, that lead in, so that it flows nicely with your writing. So here's an example. It is clear that Ivan loves Sadie when, with his nose, he pushes his favorite bone across the floor, offering it to Sadie. So you see, I have the context here, I have my lead in, but it flows nicely. It just flows in with my writing and doesn't feel like it was just, dropped in there. Finally, you always want to have a citation. So this is where you give credit to where you got it in the text. You always want to put the page number. If you haven't already stated who the author is, the author's name needs to be there. So for example, wrong way. So for example, I need to go back. So for example, we want to look at here. It has the author's last name, the page number. That's what you want to have for your citation. Page number, if it's a book, just the page number. If it's a poem, the page number. Because we're doing a short story, still give the page number of the story since it's pretty long. But you don't need to give like paragraph or anything, just the page. So it would be, for the example of The Cask of Amontillado, the author's Edgar Allan Poe. So if you haven't, stated the author's name yet, it would be Poe, page 1 if you got it on page 1, so Poe 4. Now when you're putting your citation in, it always needs to go after the quotation, and your punctuation goes at the end. So it's always quotation, citation, punctuation. Now, if there's an exclamation point or a question mark here, you leave it, but you still need that period at the end of the citation. If there's a period here in the text, take it out and move it over here. So if there's specialty punctuation, question mark or exclamation point, you'll have it here, and still your period after the parentheses. Because you don't want your parentheses to be kind of lost and just hanging out there in the middle of your paragraph, so it always needs punctuation. The next part of your paragraph is the explanation. This is where you're going to interpret or summarize, paraphrase what your quote means. So for example, if you're proving the theme of the story using irony, you're using verbal irony, you're going to find a quote or an example in the text that shows, an instance of verbal irony, and you'll put that as your example. So now you're going to explain how this quote that you used is an example of verbal irony. You're going to explain, here the author's using verbal irony because, or is, here the author shows or is demonstrating this point. So you need to explain how your quote shows that literary device. The next part is the analysis. This is the most important part of your paragraph. This is where you're connecting that literary device to your theme. So now that you've chosen your quote, you've explained to us how your quote, like for example, the example I used, how your quote is verbal irony. Now you're going to explain, how does verbal irony show this theme? How does it, affect the purpose of the story? So you could use a good word is to use the word like effect. So this creates the effect of, in order to show the theme. So how is this verbal irony showing the theme? The last part of your paragraph is the conclusion sentence. It refers back to your topic sentence or your thesis statement where you're going back to that theme and you're connecting it to that overall purpose. why did the author include this? Why is this theme so important? And that's how you write a good paragraph, or if we're thinking about it in hamburger terms, a good burger. So hopefully this video has helped you. I'll also link the PowerPoint and the assignment, so you can go through the PowerPoint later if you need to. But every single paragraph you write that's analyzing a text, a story, should follow this method. When you guys write a longer essay, you'll want to make sure each of your individual paragraphs follow this method as well.